Well, to discuss these suggested shake-ups for our Constitution and whether or not they'll be passed, I'm joined now by Mick Gooda, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner, and he joins me from Canberra. Mick Gooda, this is not tinkering around the edges. These are some major changes to the Constitution.
Well, we were asked to, by the Prime Minister as a panel, to consult with the Australian people and come up with a form of recognition. Now, Aboriginal people have been saying for years that we need to have something substantive, not just a statement of recognition. And most Aboriginal people I talk to point to those two sections you mentioned, Section 25, which allows state to disqualify people from voting on the basis of race, and Section 51(26) that allows the Commonwealth to make laws for particular races. And the feedback we've got very strongly, not only from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but from the majority of Australians, that race is no longer a valid concept in the 21st century, the way it was when the Constitution was formed in 1901. You know, you read the wording around Section 51(26), it was about controlling the darker and lesser races. You know, I think Australia's moved on from that point.
Australia may have moved on from that point, but one of the questions raised, if you scrap these sections, there's a query about whether or not laws like the Northern Territory intervention, or whether alcohol management laws in states like Queensland, for example, would therefore become defunct if you scrapped those sections of the Constitution. What do you think?
Well, the laws, say in Queensland with alcohol management plans, are done under special measures under the Racial Discrimination Act. There are some conditions around special measures. They've got to be for the benefit of people. They've got to be temporary, and they've got to have the consent. So you can have racial discrimination under the Convention Against the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, but it has to meet those standards. So you could still, it doesn't stop things like alcohol management plan. The Northern Territory legislation was brought in under the Territories Act rather than under this part. There were parts of this that were used to facilitate the special measures. So we're confident that we're not tying the arms of Parliament here to be able to make laws that are beneficial for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Are you confident that if put to a referendum that these changes are going to be introduced? Are you confident that a referendum would be successful?
Well, there's a couple of conditions. We know Australians are very reluctant to pass referendums. We know that. There's been 44 questions posed to the Australian people. Only 8 of them have been successful. I was heartened to hear Tony Abbott saying he'll take this report away and study it and come back with a position.
But he also said he didn't want to hear anything that was like a one-clause Bill of Rights. Surely that would sound a bit of an alarm bell for you?
Well, we didn't. We talked about the non-discrimination clause, and I don't think that's a one-clause Bill of Rights. I think that's something people told us they wanted. Now, he'll go away and study it, because one of the things we know, if we can't achieve bipartisanship on this question through the major parties, the panel's reconciled itself to not even going, would support the government not going ahead at this point in time.
So if you can't see any clear idea of bipartisanship, you think it should not even be put to a referendum?
It'd be absolute disaster for Australia internationally and domestically if we put this question to the Australian people and it didn't pass. You know, we would be selling the rest of the world. We're quite happy to have sections of our Constitution that anticipate laws made for special races. We would be happy to say we're not, despite 100 years of exclusion in the Constitution, we're not prepared to recognise the oldest culture in the world. So absolutely, if we couldn't achieve bipartisan support for what's being proposed, I don't think the referendum should go ahead.
And if that scenario pans out, what would that mean for Indigenous people here in Australia?
Well, I think we're patient. We'll keep on working. This is. You said in your introduction the Prime Minister committed to having the referendum held in the life of this Parliament. At the moment, I'm very pleased about the bipartisan support we do have. Let's give Tony Abbott and the government time to study our report. There were a lot of people commenting on it just before Christmas. We said let's wait till the report hits the deck and let people have a look at it and read the arguments while we're going down the road to the recommendations that we're making here.
All right. Well, Mick Gooda, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kim.